Good afternoon, everyone. We are Group 7 and we're assigned to discuss Chapter 7, Distribution Expenses. The summary of our discussion. At the end of this chapter, you will be able to know the role of the sales manager, analyzing distribution costs, analyzing by application, and setting the distribution budget. The cost of getting the manufactured products to the customers have become relatively more significant in recent years. As the cost of manufacturing products generally has declined, in fact, for some companies, the total cost of distribution of the products are in excess of the production or procurement costs. Distribution costs, also known as distribution expenses, are the costs incurred to deliver your product from the manufacturing unit to the end user or to the customers. The controller must develop the control mechanisms, secure the facts and interpret them, and communicate the information to the marketing executives. To be effective, the marketing executive must understand the accounting control information and use it to develop better marketing plans. Sales and marketing operations use more flexible and varied methods and allow for the use of several agencies or channels of distribution. If the controller collaborates with the sales and marketing management to establish the required control mechanism, the rising cost of distribution can be controlled. The impact of competition should not be discarded. The bulk of this chapter covers the detailed analysis and control of distribution costs. Roles of the sales manager. The sales manager is responsible for the requisite sales volume of the right products and the planning and control of distribution costs. This may seem like two diametrically opposed objectives. Sales managers are often under pressure to increase sales while reducing selling expenses. The sales manager must know whether distribution costs are really too high and if they are worth to cut them. Analyzing distribution costs. There are several ways to analyze distribution costs by the nature of the expense or object of expenditure. This information is recorded in the general ledger and can easily be converted into trends and expense line items or expenses as a percentage of revenue. In order to tell the sales manager why certain expenses are too high, who is responsible for the excess costs, and what can be done to improve the situation. By contribution margin. The contribution margin is calculated by deducting from sales those direct costs incurred in obtaining the segment of the sales being analyzed. The expenses not deducted from revenues in computing contribution margins are those not changed by the decision under review. The contribution margin is used for short-term tactical decisions, but it is not good for long-term decisions because it does not factor in the recovery of total costs. This approach has several advantages, including measurement of the immediate gain to the company's overall profit by the transaction under review, by functions or functional operations performed. This kind of analysis requires 5 steps. First, establish the functional operations to be measured, such as sales calls, shipments from the warehouse, and circular mailings. Second, segregate the cost of the function for measurement either through specific accounts in the general ledger or through allocations. Third is to establish units of measurement of functional service. For example, the pound of shipment may not be the measure of the shipping expense, or the number of the salespeople's call might serve as one measurement of direct field selling expenses. 4 is calculate a unit cost of operation by dividing the total controllable functional cost by the number of units. And last, take corrective action if significant cost variances occur by matching revenues to functions. This analysis matches expenses with related revenues, so the controller can demonstrate the results of a specific distribution effort. The controller would be wise to spend a considerable amount of time dividing the indirect costs into smaller pieces and using different allocation bases to allocate the costs in a logical manner among the cost objects. Sales manager can more effectively manage the sales function with this information.
Analyzing the application. Years of experience with distribution costs, analysis of proven is value. All degree of payment, a very different companies sa general approach can be described in this way. Sa pamamagitan nito, ay masuri ang iba't ibang mga gastusin at mabawasan pa ang gastusin ng isang company sa produkto. May iba't ibang pamamaraan upang ito ay masuri. Determine which type of analysis is required by particular situation such as analysis by method delivery. Alamin o tukuyin kung ano ang aplikasyon ang angkop sa isang sitwasyon katulad na lang sa pamamagitan ng deliver. Classify distribution costs according to the those are direct and indirect and select apply to allocation based to indirect and expensive. This include segregation, proper treatment of variable as opposite to fixed costs. Ito ay pag-uuri ng gastos kung ito ba ay direct o indirect expenses. Direct expenses, gastos na sa gastos sa paggawa ng isang product na raw material. Indirect expense, gastos sa utilities, rent, insurance, and other additional expense. Prepare the analysis and commentary for the appropriate executive. First step must be taken to arrive at significant cost and profit relationship. Determine the gross profit by segment. Alamin ang kabuuan kita ayon sa pagkakaimay. Calculate the direct expense by segment for deduct for this gross profit arrive at the profit after direct expense. Ipunin ang direct expense at ibawas ang kabuuan kita upang malaman ang kabuuan after ng direct expense. Number 3 is profit the indirect expense to arrive at the final net profit. Distribute the indirect expense so that we can get the final net profit. Number 4 is prepare the necessary subanalyze to pinpoint the condition needing correction. Analyzing is any geographical are used by companies for sale planning. Direct or analysis where goods are sold greatly affects the net profit because there are shaking different between theories in terms of the sales potential, gross margins, and net profit. Once the point of weaknesses are discovered, to analysis correct action must be taken. Some possibility are: number 1 is recognize the theories to allow efforts to be more in line with potential. Number 2 is range theory boundaries to reduce selling expense or secure better customer coverage. Shifts the salespeople to different areas and increase the emphasis of neglected lines of customer in theory. Change the method of sales or channel of distribution, etc. and which from a salesperson an agent. Next is change the warehouse location in the theory. Eliminate the profitable theories. Change the advertising policy or expenditure territory. Analyzing by product. That the product analyzing of distribution cost should be made when the characteristic of the commodity or the methods of distribution are such the uniform basis. Allocation is not indicative or the effort cost to sale. In this case, points of unities of sales or sale dollar may be a fair measure of the selling expenses. However, such an appointment is inaccurate or misleading in a number of circumstances. These are analyzed by product regionally reveals areas of weaknesses where some corrective action can be taken, such as shifting the emphasis of the sales effort to more profitable lines of the bringing efforts lines with the sales potential and adjusting sale prices. Next is eliminating certain unprofitable lines, packaging size, color, and so on. Next is adding new product lines relative to the family with the consequence sharing of the fixed distribution expense. Next is changing method of sales or channel of the distribution. Next is changing the type of amount of emphasis of advertising. Next is rebasing packaging design, quality, and so on.
Analysis by customer. Selling to some customer kinds is more expensive than to others, and selling to one customer within a type is more expensive than to another. Some clients need additional services like finance, transport, or storage. Some clients are determined about getting a different price, especially when consideration like order, quantity, or annual purchases are involved. Alam naman nating lahat na nakadepende sa pangangailangan o kagustuhan ng customer ang bawat produkto o serbisyo o ang mga negosyo. Isa ito sa mga rason kung bakit kailangan ng analysis ng customer. Sa ganitong paraan din malalaman kung ano ang kaibahan o bilang ng mga bawat kinikita sa isang negosyo. Aside from the use in the direction of sales effort, these analyses serve in setting prices and controlling distribution costs. Pero nakasaad din dito na hindi sa lahat ng kumpanya ay nagpapatuloy sa prosesong ito. Maaaring ang sales manager ay maglaan na lamang ng ibang particular na account kung ano ang lagay ng kanilang mga kinikita at sa ganitong sitwasyon naman may ibang espesyal na analysis na ginagamit dito. Even though individual consumers might do analysis, especially if there are a few high-volume accounts, most analyses will focus on particular groupings or categories. The two basic factors in selecting the classification to be used are the amount of distribution services required, the primary reason for differences in distribution costs, and the practicality of segregating the distribution costs. Classification that have proved useful include amount of annual purchases, size of orders, location, frequency of salespeople's calls, type of agent, it can be retailer, wholesaler, or internet retailer, credit rating of customers. Analysis by size of order. One of the factors that contributes to high distribution costs is analysis by order size. Small orders are considered unprofitable sales not because they are small, but rather because the income is insufficient to pay for all associated transaction expenses while still turning into profit. There are many instances when small orders cannot be discontinued. However, corrective action can be taken to bring the problem under control. The controller's first step is to get the fact through analysis of distribution costs by size of orders. Other analysis issues. Other analyses may also prove useful. By channel of distribution. This analysis is useful where a choice in channel of distribution may be made in order to direct sales into the most profitable channel. The analysis needs to be made from time as cost trends change. By method of sale, the same comments as in the case of analysis by channels of distribution is applicable. By salesperson, such analysis measures the salesperson performance in terms of profit and to better direct salespeople in their activities. Lastly, by organization or operating division, this analysis is useful when there are separate selling division. It is used to measure performance of the divisional executive. Samples are analyzes by departments in department store by store in a retail chain store company and by branches into a manufacturing organization. Lastly, before a decision is made, all potential effects on each company activity must be taken into account when offering suggestions based on the distribution cost analysis. When determining whether a particular area must be abandoned, the net profit impact, the change in the manufacturing volume with the same fixed expenses, and the ensuing variation in unit cost must all be considered. By the given thought, Furthermore, removing a territory might necessary closure of any storage facilities that serve the region.
Setting the distribution budget. The advertising and sales promotion expense open is planned and controlled on a project basis. Some boards of directors prepare to approve these projects in a manner similar to capital budget requests. The reason for this kind of approval are varied. For many companies, retail stores, or consumer goods producers like Procter & Gamble or Coca-Cola Inc., for example, advertising and promotion is a major expenditure. The purpose of advertising varies in different circumstances. Although the general purpose is to support the broad marketing objectives, more specific goals include educating consumers in the use of product or service, reducing the cost of other selling efforts, increasing sales, establishing or maintaining trademarks or brand names, developing new markets, meeting or outdoing competition, maintaining prices, introducing new products or services, creating favorable public opinion, and avoiding unfavorable legislation. Two methods are used to establish an advertising sales promotions budget. The lump sum appropriation method. This method entails authorizing the expenditure for advertising and sales promotions related to some factor. Its advantage is simplicity. Although it lacks a scientific basis, there may be a perceived long-term relationships between advertising expenditures and the sales level. Under this plan, the total amount to be spent could be based on a percentage of planned or budgeted sales, a percentage of the prior year's sales, or perhaps an average of several past years, a fixed amount per unit of product expected to be sold, an arbitrary percentage increase over the prior year's expenditure. The estimated amount required to attain a certain objectives. Under this method, strategies and tactics are determined so that the relevant cost for each tactic can be estimated to derive a total cost for the year. Distribution cost standards may be either of a general nature or in a units that measures individual performances. Cost standards that are of general natures are selling cost as a percentage of net sales, cost per dollar of gross profit, cost per unit sold, cost per sales transactions, cost per order received, and cost per customer's account. 5 steps to set distribution standards. Step 1. Classify the costs according to functions and activities expressive of individual responsibility. Step 2. Select units or bases of measurements through which the standards can be expressed. Step 3. Analyze past experience relative to the costs of the functions and the specific activities involved with a view to selecting the best experience and the best procedure. Step 4. Consider the effect on cost of expected changes in external conditions and of the planned sales program. Step 5. Summarize the judgments of those executives whose experience and training qualify them to judge the measures of satisfactory performance. Needed to use standards. To use standards effectively, a company must regularly record and store information about items quite dissimilar from the usual accounting information. These data are illustrative of the items to be recorded. Analysis of sales in physical units, number of sales transactions classified in terms of size, hour of day, and so on, number of quotations made, and number of orders classified in term.